Hello there, Uncle Garrett here. How are you doing? I hope you're doing great. Today I want to talk about television. Actually, regular television watching. Is it good or bad? Unfortunately, television watching sucks your life, sucks your time, and kills you earlier. What do I mean by sucking your life? Well, first and foremost, it takes away from meaningful life activities. It takes you away from the meaning of life. What is the meaning of life? Well, it's to improve yourself and to improve the world. More on that later. Regular TV watching isolates you socially, and last but not least, it degrades your attention span and memory. So, let's talk about vampires. Television is kind of like a vampire, but what are vampires in mythology? A vampire sucks your life energy. That's the key part about any vampire. And another aspect of vampires is they have to be invited in, or they are powerless against you. And they are killed, let's see, by either a silver bullet or a stake through the heart or sunlight, exposure to sunlight. The silver bullet, that is actually kind of a reference. Silver is an ancient holistic remedy. It's actually medicine, colloidal silver. Another one is stake through the heart, utter destruction. And then sunlight, representing truth, honesty. All addictions are kind of like vampires. All addictions suck the life out of you, take away your life force. Regular TV watching is what psychologists call a behavioral addiction. And regular TV watching is one of the most widespread behavioral addictions. And you might object to that. You might say, well, I watch it, but I'm not addicted. But more on that later. So actually, television and cocaine have a lot in common. Both things artificially manipulate your dopamine. What is dopamine? Dopamine is a chemical agent, and it's a neural signal. It's a molecule that your neurons use to signal each other. And it's a major part, in fact, the primary part of a reward pathway. So cocaine actually inhibits a protein that grabs dopamine after it's been used and brings it back and recycles it for later use. And cocaine grabs that, so what happens is the user gets a flood of dopamine, and it's not taken back after the reward. So that is what is behind the euphoric aspect of cocaine. Now, television is much the same way. It doesn't flood you with dopamine, but it artificially manipulates it. It makes you feel good for doing something that's actually very passive, and you're not actually doing anything except, maybe buying some of the things that the advertisers want you to buy. So it is kind of ironic then that there are television shows about vampires. And the modern television shows are even more ironic because it portrays usually young women, girls, who actually have a romance with a vampire or some spirit. And maybe they fight against vampires, but they kind of neutralize the vampire with their charm and their wit. When in real life, the real life vampire, the regular television watching, is very successfully sucking the life out of them. Former President Dwight D. Eisenhower had this matrix of activities or activity categories. On one axis was importance, and another axis was urgency. And he found that many things were important but not urgent, or urgent but not important. But there are a lot of things that are both not important and not urgent. And if you spend a lot of time in the not important and not urgent, you actually tend to make the important things that were at one time not urgent, but they were important. But by focusing on the non-urgent and non-important activities, then those important things suddenly become urgent, and then you do them in a panic, and you end up doing them not so well. So what's one activity that is maybe not urgent but very important? How about taking good care of yourself? Great exercise and a great diet. Those are things that regular TV watching tend to push out of the way. So when you're watching television every evening, are you in fact getting all the exercise you need? Maybe you are. But are you cooking the healthy food that you really ought to be doing? Well, maybe not, right? And actually, if you use and eat processed food of any type, you're not eating that well. It's not healthy. Unfortunately, the only way to get truly healthy food is to buy the food in its raw form. You know, the fruits and vegetables, and like cook the vegetables yourself, or the meats, cooking them yourselves. If you're buying anything processed, there's a lot of additives and a lot of things that are not good for you. Even the things that advertise themselves as health food, it's still processed food, and it's not nearly as good as just preparing it yourself. So that's just one thing where it's sucking the life out of you because you're doing unimportant and non-urgent things, and pushing out those important things you ought to be doing. So when you're watching television regularly, not only are you not cooking the healthy food that you need, but according to the June issue in 2011 of the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, regular television watching is associated with, heart disease, heart attacks, obesity, and type 2 diabetes. And that's because of the sedentary nature of television watching. You know, television watching is not just sitting on the couch. It's a activity that's so passive that it also, shuts down your left side of the brain a lot. It leaves the right side more intact, and that brings you in a state of mind that resembles hypnosis. And that's part of the reason television has such a big influence on people. And more about that later. But most importantly, television robs you of your pursuit of life goals. What do I mean by that? I mentioned earlier that the meaning of life is actually quite simple. It's to improve yourself and improve the world. Let's talk about improving yourself. There are so many things you can do to improve yourself. You can learn something new. You can work on a character flaw. I know that's not a popular thing to talk about or to think about, but we're all flawed, right? I'm flawed, you're flawed. And so why do we live with that? Why do people say, oh, well, I just accept myself the way I am? No, don't do that. I mean, the way to really love yourself is to improve yourself and make yourself better. And that's why I like to challenge people to just be able to take criticism and say thank you. Take criticism as something you really like to hear. I love to be criticized. Okay, put something in my comments, criticize me. I'll do something better next time. How's that? I'll set the example. Okay? And if you're not sure, if you think you're pretty good, well, how about you ask your family? I'll bet they'll tell you all kinds of things, right? Why is that? Is that because they're mean? No. The people who are close to you actually see you better than you see yourself. And that's just a funny quirk of human nature that people close to you can see your flaws better than you can. There's just a built-in blindness we humans have. So ask your family. And not only does that give you the opportunity to do something better or to improve yourself, but your family would just love it. They'd love you for that. If you go to them and say, hey, how can I improve myself? What thing can I change that'll make me better? And they'll just love you for pursuing that. And you'll set that example, and hopefully they will want to do the same thing too. So how about improving the world? Well, there are lots of things you could do, and I don't want to suggest too much. I mean, this is something that is kind of personal. So also, television has a bad influence on you. And now I know there's some good programs, but for the most part, what are you watching when you're watching television? You're witnessing murders and rapes, thousands of them, torture, theft, so many criminal acts, and you can't tell me that it doesn't rub off on you. I can feel it, and I know you can too. How often do you find yourself thinking some of the lines you've seen on television, and repeating some of the lines even in your head, or reacting with a similar face or a similar feeling of television that you've seen? And both good characters and bad, the protagonist and the antagonist, they both rub off on you to some degree or another. And maybe you're not, exactly imitating everything you see on TV. Of course not. You're an adult, right? But it rubs off to some degree. And you know how I know that? Well, corporate America bets against you every single day. Every year they spend billions and billions. What is it? Over 60 to $70 billion in advertisement revenue per year. And they're all betting that what they put on television rubs off on you. And you know what? They always win. You always lose. It works. They wouldn't do that if it didn't work. If their revenue and their sales did not go up as a result of television advertising, if you were not influenced by what you saw on television, they would not spend all that advertising money. So, here you are, this gnat versus a giant, and the giant is betting against you, and the giant always wins. Well, what kind of bet is that? The only way to win is to not bet. And how many of you have watched the television show Friends and somehow envied or at least had some idea that, I ought to be sitting in a coffee shop joking around with my super attractive friends, and I should be super attractive too. So I want you to imagine a world where all of a sudden something happened, some tragedy, and television broadcasting just stopped. What would you do? What would life be like? Well, hopefully if you reacted well, you would all of a sudden have to get maybe a lot more creative. You'd have to do something with your time. Well, of course, if you're smart, you'd start doing some of the important things that you weren't doing before. Or you'd stop procrastinating on some of those important things and maybe do them earlier so that you can do important things before they become urgent. Or what would you do for entertainment? Well, there are so many other alternatives. Read a book, exercise, eat healthy, cook healthy food, spend time with your family. How about that? Spend time with your children. Children, especially when they're young, just crave attention. They just love for you to spend more time with them. Well, if you drop television watching, maybe you will have more time to spend with them. About television watching with the family. Before I mentioned that television isolates people socially. And that's true even if you're sitting down and watching television with your whole family, all cuddled up on the couch. You're not really connected with each other, not truly. You're all individually connected with the television and not each other. Now, one way to mitigate that is to, watch a show, then turn the television off, and then talk about it together. What are some of the messages that were in that show? What are some of the hidden messages they had? And what was right and what was wrong? When I say television has a bad influence on you, think about maybe a television show that would be very good to watch. People setting a really good example. A show with a family that has conflicts, yes, but resolves them very effectively, and a family whose parents, love their children and their children love them back, and they spend time with each other, and the parents take time to educate their children, and and it shows a happy family that gets along well. Well, when's the last time you saw a show like that? Well, maybe 50s or something. But even then, those shows are rare because, first of all, they are a little bit boring sometimes. They're not exciting like some of the shows on now. And actually, I think it goes against some of the agenda that's being pushed on us by the corporate interests. They want you to mostly be spending your money on things that they want you to spend them on, and some of them are not good for you. So I want to give you a challenge. The challenge is 30 days, no television. Can you do it? If your first reaction is to say, no way, no, that'd be so boring and I'd have no idea what to do, and what about all my shows? I'd miss so much. The more you mentally object, the more it indicates that you are addicted and you really need to break that addiction. So, first of all, is your life so boring that the most exciting thing and the best thing you can think of is to sit on the couch and watch these flickering images? Is it really so empty and so full of non-life that you really have to just fill it with television, the unimportant and not urgent things? Well, if that's the case, now's the time to turn your life around, right? Now's a great opportunity to drive the stake through the heart of your addiction. I talked about the TV being a modern-day real-life vampire, and that's what it is. And you have to drive the stake. You have to just kill it. And it's not so hard to kill, really. The 30-day challenge, you might think, oh, wow, that's incredible. Impossible. Well, once you get going, you might find eventually after a week or two, it's easier than you think, and you can do it. And once you start really activating your mind and body and get yourself truly engaged, start entertaining yourself with activities that require your brain to be engaged, and activities, again, that move towards the purpose of life, improving yourself and improving the world. I think by the end of 30 days, you might find, wow, my life is so much better without this vampire. And that's my goal. I want to prove it to you, and I want you to prove it to yourself, that life is so much better, and you'll really begin to lose the desire to watch television, and it'll be a liberating thing. You'll love me for it. So I hope you put that in the comments. I hope some of you will say, okay, I took the 30-day challenge, and yes, I feel so much better. I hope to hear from you. And listen, don't tell me. I know you're thinking things like all these excuses. I need the television to watch news. I have to watch news. I have to keep up. Well, no, you don't. Period. End of story. No, you don't. You don't need to watch the news. I mean, and if you want to keep up with the news, there are other ways to get that. Probably more effective ways. There's so many online news sources where you can read the news. And you might find eventually you like that better. Or another excuse might be, well, I don't really watch television. I just keep it on in the background, and I work, and it just keeps me company in the background. So I like it that. I don't need to break any addiction. Well, yes, you do. I hate to be contrary, but there are so many other better ways to keep yourself company while you're working on something mundane or something where you'd like to have some background noise. So how about a podcast, especially a long-form podcast where you're learning something new, or even covering the news that way. You can do that. The key thing is long form, so something that engages your brain and stretches your attention span, and or maybe an audiobook. That's another great way. So it activates your imagination as you're hearing the words of the audiobook. You're picturing it in your mind, and you do learn things more from reading a book or even listening to an audiobook, so much more than television. So, and don't tell me, well, television can be educational. Well, yes, it can. I mean, some shows can be. But there are so many other alternatives that are more educational, that do better. For example, if you really want to do something to educate yourself, and maybe you have to concentrate on something else while you're doing it, an audiobook, something that's nonfiction, lots of self-improvement books that are audiobooks, nonfiction, books where you can actually learn something new, so far superior to television. So in summary, regular television watching is like a modern-day real-life vampire. It sucks your life away. It kills you early. It socially isolates you. And like a vampire, you need to drive a stake through its heart. You need to destroy that addiction. Television, this is a behavioral addiction that manipulates your dopamine artificially, much like cocaine, but not to the same degree, of course. And so to overcome that, to drive the stake through that addiction, I present to you the 30-day challenge. Just for 30 days, and you can decide after 30 days, but fill those 30 days not with just sitting on the couch waiting and hoping and hoping the time goes by fast so you can turn the television back on. Don't do that. Fill your days with the amazing things in life, improving yourself, improving the world, spending time with your family, reading, learning, so many things you can do, so many better things. And you'll find, I hope, that your life is so much more filled. You now, to entertain yourself, you have to become much more creative, and it'll just light a fire in your mind. And I hope you'll love it as much as I have loved it when I overcame my own television addiction. Okay? So now this video, as with all of them, is a labor of love with my wife and I. We both work on all these videos so hard. Both of us contribute, and I'm here in front of the camera, but my wife does so much research and editing and helping me. I really appreciate her for that. But more so, I appreciate you for listening. Thank you so much, and I hope you like this video. Click the like button, please. Please and thank you. Subscribe to the channel for more, and share this video with the friends that you love, that you also want to help them in the same way that you've been helped. And I just really appreciate it, and thank you so much. Thanks for listening. So until next time, this is Uncle Garrett. Goodbye.